Hey guys, Johnny Crimson 2000 here, and welcome to a new episode of Hidden Gaming Gems. Now I can already hear what many of you may be thinking. Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball? Really? And yes, this game isn't one that most people would exactly consider hidden. After all, this game received a huge amount of publicity around the time it came out, so it wasn't like this went under the radar. But as I mentioned before, this series is about games that went unnoticed, and sometimes this means that a game did get attention just for the wrong reasons. And this is never more evident than with Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball. Now, I should point out that this game isn't one of the best video games ever. Heck, it's not even one of the best volleyball games. But it does offer some good gameplay if you know how to look for it, and if you're able to get into it. Another thing I should mention is that it's hard to do a proper Hidden Gaming Gems review on this game without explicitly saying why it went unnoticed in the first place, mostly because more people focused on the sexually provocative nature of this game rather than the gameplay itself. So for the majority of this review, I will be focusing on the highly overlooked gameplay, though I will touch on some other reasons why people ignored this game as well. So without further ado, let's take a look at Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball. Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball was released exclusively for the Xbox in 2003. Riding high on the heels of DOA 3, the series was experiencing a surge of popularity due in part to their reputation for pushing the limits of the Xbox, as well as their sexy leading ladies which were always front and center. So it was no surprise that Team Ninja would want to create a new game that focused exclusively on the girls of DOA. It was the first game in the Dead or Alive series that wasn't going to be a fighting game and would take the series onto a whole new genre. As mentioned before, this game received a whole lot of attention when it was first announced. On one side, people were curious, though not entirely shocked, that the DOA series would get its own volleyball game. On the other hand, this game also received a lot of negative attention because of the objectification of women, due to the supposed voyeuristic nature of the game, even though that wasn't necessarily the case. Regardless, the game was released and the rest was history. As far as the story is concerned, this game quite possibly has the craziest story of any sports game ever made. It basically picks up from Zach's ending in Dead or Alive 3. Having won some money from the DOA 3 tournament, Zach takes his winnings and gambles it in Las Vegas and hits the jackpot, becoming a millionaire. He then takes the money and buys his own island, constructing a vacation paradise complete with hotels, pools, shops, and even a Ferris wheel. Afterward, Zach makes the decision to trick the girls of DOA by claiming to host another tournament on his island. Of course, when they get there, they all find out that they've been tricked. Having no other way to get off the island, they make the best of it and proceed to, well, play volleyball and go shopping, of course. What ensues is a 2-week vacation for the DOA girls, and it's up to the player to choose what they do for the remainder of the 14 days. While the story isn't an integral part of the game at all, and it's not entirely original, the cutscenes are still pretty hilarious nonetheless, highlighted by a Titanic parody and Zach zipping around in a jetpack. It's enough to give the game a bit of personality even if it's not the main focus. It at least attempted to explain why these girls would all be on the island at the same time, leisurely spending a vacation together. And yes, for the duration of the game's story, the girls' rivalries from previous games have been lessened to just dislikes, which ties into the gameplay. Speaking of which, the gameplay is the reason for this review. You see, when most people heard of this game, and when they see it now, the assumption is that this is a very shallow volleyball game with perverted overtones, essentially just being a game that showcases the DOA girls in skimpy swimsuits masquerading as a sports game. Something that only perverts would appreciate. But the truth is that it's not really any of those things. It's not just a volleyball game, and it's not really some virtual voyeuristic video game either, despite many people claiming it to be so. The thing is, Xtreme Beach Volleyball can be a really deep and complex game if you know what you're doing and if you're willing to invest in it. To start things off, you have two options to choose from. The first option is Exhibition Mode, which is just what it sounds like. This introduces what many would see as the main gameplay mode of the game, the actual volleyball. Every match is 2-on-2 and you can choose how many points to win. From there you choose your court, your character, partner, and opponents, and then you can decide which swimsuits each of them wear. That's pretty much the extent of match customization, which isn't much, but then again this is volleyball, so you can't really get much more complicated than this without going over the top. Once you get into the match, you'll notice that this game is really quite simple. You only ever use two buttons. One button is used for spiking and blocking, while the other is used for setting and receiving. The function of these two buttons changes depending on a few things, whether you're on offense or defense, and your position on the court. For example, if you're on defense and you press the A button while you're some distance away from the net, you'll just return the ball regularly. However, if you're right up to the net and you press the A button, you'll initiate a block where you can essentially get a point yourself. Things change up a bit while on offense as well. You can use the B button to set the ball up and have your partner spike the ball down for a chance at a point, and vice versa. An interesting thing about this game is that it functions on pressure, meaning that putting different pressure on the button results in different actions. For example, tapping the A button during a spike will result in the ball being tapped and landing only a few feet away, where it can easily be returned if your opponent is close by. However, if you press the same button hard, you will deliver a devastating spike which will travel farther and will actually have a chance at knocking the opponent down from the sheer force. Another thing to keep in mind is that this game also makes use of timing. It's not just a matter of whether you press the button hard, but also of when you press the button hard that will result in a more devastating spike, which increases your chances at getting a point. Overall, the volleyball in this game can be just as competitive as you want it to be. The thing is that this game is closer to classic arcade games like NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, rather than sports simulation titles like Madden with its overcomplicated setup. While some people may see it as oversimplified, the truth is that it can actually be pretty fun, especially when you get a couple of friends involved in 2-on-2 matches. This game is similar to old arcade games in that it's easy to pick up and play, but harder to master. And the reality is that during competitive matches, which can happen often, you start to ignore the scantily clad women because you're more focused on the game as opposed to the pretty girls, even though that's what a lot of people assume the focus would be on. Of course, this is only a portion of the entire game. The main mode is story mode, which is where the majority of the game takes place. You may be wondering why a sports game would even have a story mode to begin with, and the truth is that this is a pretty deep story mode. Not for the story itself, but because of the gameplay and strategy involved. Yes, you heard that right. There's strategy involved in this game, and there's a lot of it too. You start off by choosing one of the 8 available girls, which doesn't seem like much, but believe me, you'll be relieved that you only have 8 to choose from later on. From there, you'll be placed on the island where you'll have 14 days to essentially do whatever you want. The island has different places to go, but the main areas are the shops, poolside, the hotel, and the various beaches which can serve as the courts for volleyball matches. Each day you're allowed to do 3 things, not including shopping, before nightfall when you have to return to the hotel, one in the morning, afternoon, and evening. The interesting thing about this setup is that you can really make this game whatever you want it to be. You can go the entire 14 days without ever playing a single game of volleyball. So if you're able to completely skip out on the volleyball, then you may be wondering where all the strategy comes from. Well, that all comes down to the ridiculous amount of collectibles available in this game. To get straight to the point, there are well over 300 different swimsuits and many more items that can be unlocked. Collecting them once is already insane enough, but you can collect all these for each of the 8 girls. Some simple math will tell you that if you want to get absolutely every swimsuit in this game for each of the girls, you're looking at well over 2,000 items to collect in the entire game. Now, getting all these items involves an extremely taxing process of collecting money, winning volleyball matches, befriending other girls, and a whole lot of trading. Merely focusing on the swimsuits, there are many different ways of collecting each of the swimsuits available for the girls. Each girl starts out with only one swimsuit, and the most common way to get new ones is to buy them from the sports shop. But of course, you need money, or in this case, Zach dollars, and there are a few ways of getting that money that you need. First, you can go to the poolside where you can play a rather simple hopping game where your girl will jump across floating platforms. This game essentially tests your pressure and timing whenever you press the A button. The second way of getting money is to go to the casino at night when you're in the hotel. Here, you'll find a selection of typical Las Vegas casino games like roulette, poker, and blackjack, though of course it's all luck-based. And then you have the third and best way of making money, which is the actual volleyball. Of course, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, the shop itself only offers a certain set of swimsuits for each individual girl, meaning that you can only get certain swimsuits by playing as certain girls. In order to get the other swimsuits, you need to trade them with the other girls. The other thing to remember is that you need a partner to play volleyball games, so before you even start making any kind of money, you need to befriend one of the girls on the island. But how do you do that? Well, this introduces another aspect of the game, which is the relationships that you build with the DOA girls. Each girl has their own personality and their likes and dislikes. The way to befriend a girl is to pamper her with gifts which you can get from the various shops. These gifts can be accessories, random little presents, or even swimsuits, which is how the girls can get the ones that aren't available at their shops. But of course, they won't always like everything that you give them, and may end up throwing the items immediately in the trash, despite how much money you just spent. Truth is, you really need to learn what each girl is like and what are the things that they really love in order to be successful. Once you befriend a girl, you can ask them to be your volleyball partner, which will help in buying more items. Having a stronger relationship also means that you have a better chance at your girl not throwing items away, even if they don't really like the item, which is the way you get them to accept some of the swimsuits. At this point, you also have a chance at them sending new items as well. At the end of the 14-day vacation, the game resets, and the next time you start up, you'll have to begin the game over again. The good thing is that all items and Zach dollars carry over so you can continue your quest to collect every item. So as you can see, there is a lot to do in this game, and the truth is that this isn't just a peeping show like many people assume. Sure, the girls can wear some pretty scandalous swimsuits, but that's it. There's no nude code, no shower scenes, no sex whatsoever, and the closest thing the game comes to being voyeuristic is when you go to the beach and the girls are shown lounging around. Even there, you're limited to the camera angles and the entire thing lasts all of 10 seconds. and you don't even get anything out of it. If anything, it wastes your time and it prevents you from progressing in the game. So while there certainly is some fan service, it's really no more offensive than panning the camera around in a Super Smash Bros. Match and being able to see Peach's dress. It's there, but it's not the main focus. Presentation-wise, this game is certainly well produced, which is to be expected from a DOA game. The visuals are obviously outstanding and look even better than those found in DOA 3. This game utilized a new graphics engine and it shows in how beautiful the game looks. The girls are obviously beautiful and the clothes they wear, such as skirts, all have realistic physics whenever they're on the volleyball courts. The sand gets pushed around as the girls run around in it, the water is crystal clear, and even the ball itself has realistic physics. Everything looks the way it should, and the only hiccups occur during the volleyball when the movements of the girls can look a bit choppy going from one animation to the next. Aside from that, there's really not much else to say. The sound itself is good as well, with a nice selection of Caribbean-inspired tracks from real-life music artists. The great thing about being on the Xbox is that if you don't like the available soundtrack, you can always use your own custom soundtrack from your hard drive, so there's really no point in complaining about the music. So with all this said, why do I still consider this game to be a hidden gem? Well, let me ask a very simple question. How many people do you know owned this game? And I mean really owned it and thoroughly played it. Despite the huge amount of publicity that this game received around its debut, it seems that not many people were willing to give it a try, but it's not really hard to see why. With so much negative attention that this game received about it being degrading to women and how it sent video games back, all of a sudden people were made to feel guilty about even thinking of getting this game. I can personally say that I was embarrassed to even look at this game on the shelves whenever I saw this at my local GameStop. I felt like if someone caught me looking at the cover or holding the case just to see what it was about, that I was going to be harshly judged and called a pervert. Other than the Rumble Roses series, I can't think of any other situation where people have actively avoided the game for anything but the gameplay. Even if you looked at the gameplay itself, most people that got the chance to play this game were underwhelmed. Maybe they were expecting a sports simulation title due to the realistic graphics, but as I mentioned before, this game is closer to arcade titles as opposed to offerings from EA. The fact that this game boils down to a complicated collectathon also turned people off, maybe because they weren't expecting it to require strategy to fully complete. Even then, the swimsuits are really only cosmetic changes that don't really add to the gameplay, functioning more as personal goals. But then again, it's not like other, more successful games weren't doing the same thing either. The best comparison is the LEGO games. Those games are also incredibly simple as well, with the majority of its lasting appeal being the ability to collect and unlock various characters and vehicles, which at the end of the day are really no more than just slight variations or even just color palette swaps of existing characters and vehicles. The difference here is that people weren't ashamed to play that game, so they were less likely to scrutinize it. And finally, this game even alienated the DOA fans themselves. Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball was a complete departure to the normal fighting genre that fans had become accustomed to, so not only did the game's negative publicity hurt fans' view of it, but now they were expected to play a completely different type of game, and the last time I checked, fighting games and sports games don't play the same way. But despite all of this, I can honestly say that this game can be a rather fun experience if you give it a chance. As someone who was once utterly embarrassed at the thought of getting this game myself, I can tell you that nowadays I will gladly explain to people about what makes this title a good pickup. Sure, you may still feel a bit embarrassed and may not want to play this around your girlfriend, but that's not because of the bad gameplay. The gameplay itself is the reason why I included this game in this review, and after all, the gameplay should be the driving force for whether or not a game is worth playing. Nowadays, you can find this game pretty cheap as well. I found this game for $5, and considering that I've invested well over 10 hours on it, it's well worth the price. Maybe I won't fully convince you to get this game yourself, but I hope that now you have a different view of this game than the one you had at the start of this review. And if that's the case, then I know I've done my job right. As always, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you want to get more stuff from me. In the meantime, if you like my videos, be sure to find me on Twitter, Tumblr, Raptr, and Screwattack.com to see the other gaming related content that I upload. Info is in the description. Who knows? Maybe you'll like my stuff. Maybe. Maybe.